In a world where justice should be blind, it's disheartening to see the ugly truth of prejudice and discrimination amongst the very people sworn to protect us. Many crooked cops seem to forget that not only does CCTV exist, but they are required to wear a camera on their chest at all times. Some officers seem to forget that this camera records their every move. Some say it's for the officer's safety, or it's used to collect evidence. But I think it's to capture despicable moments like these. An attack on innocent teens. In 2020, during the height of the pandemic, a New Jersey cop approached a group of black teenagers sitting on their front porch steps.
I keep telling them to move, and all they're doing is getting smart.
Seemingly unprovoked, 31-year-old officer Ryan Dubiel pulled out his pepper spray and fired it into the eyes of two teenagers. The group of teens immediately ran and stumbled back inside the home. The altercation occurred when Officer Dubiel was responding to a trespassing call. He approached the young men asking for their names, which most of the boys declined. Confused and feeling violated, the boys ignored the officer and returned to what they were doing. Officer Dubiel then fired the pepper spray at as many of the teens as he could. The Bodycam captures the moment of assault on camera. The officer, who had worked in 9 different departments previously, was rightfully suspended without pay. Assaulted for littering. A Michigan police officer assaulted a black man several times by beating him in the head and face during a traffic stop.
Seemingly trying to run out of the passenger side, but stopped by officers on both sides.
Dayton Hood, age 25, was driving with 3 other passengers when he was pulled over on the basis of a routine traffic stop. According to the police, the man refused to get out of his car, but in the footage he is seen on the ground. 3 officers pulled the 25-year-old from the car, pushing him to the ground and sitting on him. One officer can be seen here punching the man 7 times in the face as the man screams. The man's face is pushed into the grass as he muffles, "I can't breathe," over and over again. The footage is blank, so it's hard to tell what was happening at this point, but the footage clears up later. The man can be seen with his face riddled with fear as officers finally removed his face from the mud. The officer who originally began the assault on Dayton Hood can be seen spraying a substance less than a few centimeters from the man's eye. He screams in agony as the officer puts the white bottle back into his right pocket. The officer who captured the moment on his body cam stands in silence as he distances himself as if he is trying to capture every moment on camera. The video ends with 25-year-old Dayton Hood screaming, "My eye."
Look at my eye. Yeah. Feel like you're not dead, so how about you just stop?
Young black boy threatened with beating for leaving elementary school. In January 2021, a 5-year-old boy had walked away from his elementary school when 2 officers found and approached him. The police began threatening the young boy with physical violence and called him "Little Beast." The 5-year-old boy, dressed in a red and white jersey, was terrified.
Cut it out. Hey, cut it out. Cut it out.
When the officers found the boy, he was pressed up against a silver car. The police immediately began berating the boy, telling him he's not old enough to make the decision to leave school, which is true, but the words and tone used to speak to this child were deeply disturbing. In the body cam footage, the boy can be heard repeating, "No, no, no," as he is passed up and down the street. The footage then skips to officers and teachers in a small room with the boy and his mother. His mother explains her ways of punishment as she removes the boy's clothes. Later, an officer can be heard saying, "No, we want you to beat him."
I believe it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, we want you to beat him.
His mother replied by saying, "I can't, I'm not going to prison." Another officer can then be heard saying, "As the state of Maryland, we applaud you and praise you for beating your
You
kid."
can most definitely. Matter of fact, we applaud the fact that you would please beat your kid.
A bad mother or a group of evil police officers? I'll let you decide. In Dayton, Ohio, a lone disabled black man was pulled from his car by his hair and arrested. As the man screamed for help, his head was smashed into the ground as he was told to stop. He was blamed for the violence against him, with officers telling passersby he made this decision.
Ma'am, he made his decision.
Dayton, Ohio has been in the news recently due to the troubling incident involving a lone disabled black man who was brutally arrested. As the man screamed for help, his head was repeatedly slammed into the ground as officers shouted for him to stop. Shockingly, passersby were informed that he had made this decision and was to blame for the violence against him. Sadly, this is not an isolated incident, and recent body cam footage has shed light on the shocking racism and brutality that pervades the police force in Dayton and across the country. The footage shows officers making derogatory remarks towards black people and using excessive force during routine traffic stops and other encounters. As the nation grapples with the urgent need for police reform, it is imperative that we address these systemic issues head-on.
Video showing police dragging a black paraplegic man from his car during a traffic stop in Ohio.
We must acknowledge the institutionalized racism and biases that permeate our society and work towards meaningful change that promotes justice and equality for all. We owe it to the countless victims of police violence and their families to stand up and demand accountability from those who are sworn to protect us. It is time to hold our police forces to a higher standard, one that reflects the values of a just and equitable society. Unarmed man attacked by police dog. The newly released body camera footage of the Sheffield Police Department and the Colbert County Sheriff's Office has once again brought attention to the excessive use of force against unarmed black men by the police. On June 17, 2021, Marvin Long was forcefully arrested and commanded to be bitten by a police dog, even though he was unarmed and posed no threat to the officers. The first video shows Long standing beside a police cruiser as officers walk up after completing a prior arrest. However, instead of leaving Long alone, the officers followed him back to his home without a warrant or probable cause. The next video footage shows Long standing on his porch, telling the officers to leave while they ask if the property is his. Long's constitutional right to remain silent was ignored as the officers aggressively wrestled him to the ground and began to frisk him unlawfully without probable cause or his consent. Even after being bitten by a police dog, Long was told to stop resisting, adding insult to injury. It is clear from the video footage that the officers were not protecting the public or enforcing the law. Instead, they were attacking an unarmed black man for no reason and enjoying it. This incident is yet another example of the systemic racism and violence that black people face in the United States. It is time for the police to be held accountable for their actions and for justice to be served. We cannot continue to tolerate such brutality in our communities. Assault on a young black man. The decision by DA Todd Williams not to call for a criminal investigation of the white police officers who pinned a black man by his neck has sparked outrage among activists and community members. Many are calling for justice for Devon Lewis Rayshawn Whitmire, who was arrested on May 13th for communicating threats. The incident was captured on video by Whitmire's fiancée, Carrie Spiegel, who described the officer's actions as an assault. Despite this, Williams decided not to request an investigation by the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. The use of force by the officers has been a topic of controversy, with some arguing that it was excessive, while others defend it as necessary to detain a man who was resisting arrest and claimed to have a gun.
Okay, well, can y'all back up so I can get my gun off you? Where's your gun at? Don't worry.
The Citizen Times made a public records request for any 911 call that led to the arrest, but city officials stated that there was no such record. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the community remains outraged at what they see as an unjust system that fails to hold law enforcement accountable for their actions. Activists continue to demand justice for Whitmire and for a review of the police department's policies on the use of force. It remains to be seen whether their calls for change will be heard and acted upon.
The community deserves answers as to why there was no de-escalation by Asheville.
I hope the unveiling the ugly truths of racism amongst police wasn't too upsetting. The collection of stories was not for the faint-hearted. Witness firsthand the injustices committed by those meant to serve and protect. It's time to open our eyes and demand change.